Well, I will begin. We might have a few individuals filtering in and also virtually logging in to join us this evening. But I want to start off this evening just by thanking everyone for joining us, virtually and in person, which is a really amazing thing at this time. And joining us just to see the 2021 Magic Silver Show, the Elena Diane Curris Juried Photography Exhibition, to hear our 2021 juror speak, and to celebrate Elena Curris along with the Curris family and friends who made this event and the return of Magic Silver possible. This exciting exhibition has emerged again to represent much of what is happening in contemporary photo media through the generous support of the Elena Diane Curris Endowment for the Visual Arts. This endowment was created in memory of Elena Curris, the daughter of Joe Hearn Curris and Dr. Constantine Curris, the sixth president of Murray State University, and will continue to impact and provide an educational experience of generations of students, and for that we are grateful. As you will witness in the Claire Meagle Gallery, the 2021 Magic Silver Show, the Elena Diane Curris Juried Photography Exhibition, features 45 artists from a variety of national and international destinations. This exhibition proves to be a strong component of the University Gallery's educational programming, featuring a diverse range from traditional to progressive techniques in photography and photo media. The Magic Silver Juried Show began in the 1970s, started by the then Murray State photography professor Michael Johnson as a showcase for artists working in photographic media and to reward those working in photography. Quickly after its beginning, the exhibition began to feature exciting new work from artists all over the world, and as photography changed, the exhibition changed to include a variety of photo media processes. Without that initial initiative and foresight, vision, and hard work of Johnson to initiate this juried exhibition in the 70s, we might not be here today celebrating Elena in the same fashion. A return to hosting a juried biennial exhibition of this caliber and incorporating a visiting lecture opportunity is vital and valuable to the education of our students and our community members. So I'd like to acknowledge the efforts and support from the art and design studio technician, Woody Leslie, during the installation of the exhibition, and the crew of student workers that serve as gallery assistants and staffers, essential director assistants in my case, during the install and ongoing daily gallery routines. And to acknowledge the support of Chris Lavery, Chair of Art and Design, David Balthrop, Dean of CHFA, Tina Bernat, Executive Director of Development, J.P. Paul, Director of Development for CHFA, Carol Brun, Special Projects Coordinator for Murray State, Dr. Tim Todd, a Provost, and Dr. Robert Jackson, 14th President of Murray State, for their contributions toward the success of this exhibition and for recognizing the cultural relevance and importance of the University Gallery's mission and educational programming to our department, our campus, and our greater regional community. So just some previous events that were held in conjunction with the Elena Diane Curris Endowment for the Visual Arts, which has been with us since late 2018. So not very long, but still a lot of important educational programming has emerged from this. The 2018 lecture by artist and professor Matthew Wiedemann called The Monster in the Image was held in this room with some exciting magic and his research on the silver screen with Frankenstein and other amazing artwork that he had created. The 2019 inaugural Magic Silver exhibition with the return of the show with a juror talk by Bradley Dever Treadaway. And then we had the 2020 STEAM panel discussion titled Contemporary Relationships Between Science, Technology, Engineering, Math, and the Photographic Arts. That was held on February 11th of 2020. And that was one of our last in-person events before the pandemic hit. So you can see how important having these visitors can be. That event was moderated by photographer Michelle Burdine, featured an exhibition by artist Callista Lyon, and along with Murray State faculty members across different disciplines, Dr. Matthew Williams, Dr. Marcy Venter, MSU research librarian and photographer Dana Thompson, and MSU coordinator of GIS and drone imaging, Michael Busby. That panel was fascinating and provided our students with some vital connections between science and art. And here we are today, despite this unprecedented interruption to our lives by this ongoing pandemic, placing us in a mode to adapt to changing contingency plans, and then changing contingency plans, and then changing contingency plans. Like, we could go on, right, with all the changes. But we're making yet another important event happen. So I really want to give a round of applause to recognize and to thank the Curris family for this very generous gift, that all of these opportunities would not be afforded without their support. So please, join me in thanking them. Thank you. All right, and I'm going to ask Dr. Curris to come up, take the floor to say a few words. But Dr. Constantine Curris was the 6th president of Murray State University, a position he held from 1973 to 1983. He held the title of president at other universities following his tenure at Murray State, as well as holding the honor of becoming the president of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities from 1999 to 2008, and has been a consistent contributor to the articles and contributing articles to the Chronicle of Higher Education. In recent years, Curris has been a consultant in many academic searches, served on academic committees, and maintains a strong philanthropic connection to institutions of higher education. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Curris.
Thank you, Michael, and I do want to express appreciation to you, to the university officials that you identified, and to the students that assisted you in putting together the exhibition outside. Our daughter Elena was born while Joe and I were at Oakhurst, and along with her brother Bob that is with us today. So she's really sort of a child of Murray State, and with her unexpected and sudden passing, we thought long and hard about what we wanted to do in her memory, and we decided we wanted to do something at Murray State. And Elena had a passion for the arts. She was particularly into design and photography, and this seemed to be a natural. And then I started thinking about the Department of Art, which is now Art and Design, at Murray State. It was headed by Clara Eagle, one of the first women ever to hold a departmental chairmanship in higher education, period. And she was a dynamo. And she was succeeded by Bob Head, who did a terrific job while we were here. And through the years, the department has done very well. And I do recall not only Michael Johnson's work in setting up the Magic Silver Show, which added so much to it, but we had some exciting exhibitions during those days, including the exhibition from the Morgan Gallery in Kansas City that had works by Dwayne Hanson and other leading artists. And among the lecturers that we had, the one that stands out to me was the Bulgarian artist Christo and his wife Jean-Claude came and lectured to us on his work at that time preparing for, I think, Manhattan's wrapping of the gates. So this has been an exciting place for the arts, and we wanted to be a part of it, and the opportunity to revive the Magic Silver Show in Elena's honor is very meaningful to us, and so we joined the university in welcoming everybody tonight.
Thank you. So the 2021 return of the Magic Silver Show, the Elena Diane Curris Juried Photography Exhibition, emerged from the careful, thoughtful, and challenging selections made by our juror, Sherri Nienass Littlefield. Littlefield is a New York-based artist, curator, art dealer, and educator interested in data, collaborative projects, and using contemporary art towards social good. Littlefield was the director at Foley Gallery from 2016 to 2019 in New York City, and was the interim director of Clamp Art in 2020, Projects curated by Littlefield have been featured at Pulse Art Fair, the Huffington Post, ArtNet, DNA Info New York, Whitewall Magazine, among others. She has served as a juror and reviewer for many prestigious exhibitions and competitions, including Photo Lucida Critical Mass, PDNA's The Curator, Photoville, and PDNA's Photo Plus. She was a reviewer during the prestigious Palm Springs Photo Festival in September of 2020. As a photographer, Littlefield has exhibited her art nationally and internationally, including the Brighton Photo Biennial, the Orlando Museum of Art, the Aperture Foundation, and the Museum of Contemporary Art in Georgia. Since 2018, Sherri Littlefield has served on the advisory board for the New York chapter of the American Society of Media Photographers. Littlefield has previously been on faculty at the Savannah College of Art and Design, the Parsons School of Design, and has taught courses at the International Center of Photography, among other institutions. For additional curatorial projects, please follow Treat Gallery. I think we have a logo here. Littlefield is the director and founder of Treat Gallery, a gallery where she curates exhibitions and provides opportunities for artists to exhibit and sell work not only in exhibitions, but also at art fairs across the country, as well as providing a percentage of sales going toward the social good via donations to a variety of nonprofit organizations and support groups. Littlefield had the challenging task of selecting artworks from nearly 100 artists from across the U.S. and a number of international locations who combined submitted over 800 photos and videos for her to distill down for the 2021 Magic Silver Show to the 83 works by the 45 artists we have on display in the gallery. An impressive commitment, keen observation, and smart selection within such a quick turnaround. Thank you, Sherri. I will now turn this over to Sherri Littlefield so you can hear more about her work, her career, all of her amazing and inspiring talents and endeavors. So please join me in welcoming Sherri Nienass Littlefield.
All right, let's just get this plugged in and ready. No, it's all right. Can you all hear me okay? All right. So thank you so much to everyone who's had me here. It's been such a warm welcome getting to meet everyone, especially Professor Mike Martin. It's been so wonderful the whole time, from asking me to be part of this up until making sure I got in smoothly and everything today. So the nature of what I'll be talking about today is why photography? And by that, I mean, what makes photography special? Why have I chosen this medium to curate, deal, and personally create art in? Something that I really liked about the open call here at Murray State in this gallery is that the open call was open to all forms of photo-based imagery and video. Photography is such a unique and ever-changing medium. I mean, day to day, things are constantly evolving and changing in this field. And the technology, Photoshop, all of that, things are constantly changing that accompany the medium. So, of course, some older mediums like painting, drawing, there's, some steps in evolvement there, like formulas change, but nothing quite like photography, especially because photography is so new in comparison to those mediums. So I figured I would first touch on my short essay for the exhibition. And you can also read this outside of the gallery, but I think it kind of ties together for me why photography. So a photograph, by definition, it's a record of light captured by a camera. That's really all it is. It's an image sensor or light-sensitive paper. At its formation, photography was considered a controversial and strange practice. Far from instant, it used to take hours to produce a single image, and it was definitely not considered an art form. One of the earliest uses of the medium was post-mortem photography, which was a mourning portrait of the recently deceased. And it was used by upper-class Victorian families. Images were a tool of preserving things that were loved. Photography was a sign of wealth and a separation of the haves and have-nots. As I mentioned, Victorian families could afford this. The average family could not. In the mid to late 1800s, the photographic process was complex and detailed, and there wasn't much room for error. As the accessibility of photography grew into the 1900s, content evolved into documentation, storytelling, experimentation, and marketing, all of which were embraced. So slowly people began to embrace this new medium that was very controversial. Today, photography is instant. Think of your phones, think of everything. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous in everyday life. With the ease of a camera at our fingertips, the role of the photograph process and subject matter has been reversed, and the latter can lend itself to more complexity and exploration. So I have a couple things here, some of the earliest pieces of photography. It was like a very early business card, a carte de visite. You would just exchange this with people at their version of conferences. Then you have a very recent image from less than a year ago. It's a NFT, if you want to get into those, by an artist, Beeple. It's very instant. He took a photo every day and collaged it together. It's an ongoing project. Sold at an auction house for $69 million. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Whew. So, why photography? I have another image here from Jessica Dimmock. This is from her series, From the Ninth Floor. We pay homage to early pioneers of the movement who mastered technical excellence and artistic decisions like the decisive moment. Photography has become a tool for documenting the have and have-nots instead of a barrier. Images can present another perspective to a viewer, while video can immerse you into another world. The medium challenges what contemporary art is, was, and can be. It's ever-changing and controversial, especially with the rise of NFTs. That's a very controversial thing right now, not just content-wise, environmental impact, and the list really goes on. But throughout this all, photography continues to evolve, and its many forms call for a celebration. So just thinking about how it can lend itself to another world, for good or for worse, I think of The Ninth Floor, which is a project here. This is a drug dealer counting some cash. So The Ninth Floor, which is a project I'm referencing here, it documents a group of addicts who moved into the apartment of a former millionaire's wealthy neighborhood in downtown Manhattan. A man in his mid-60s allowed a young addict to move into a spare bedroom in his large home. Several years later, he became an addict himself, no longer had a room to himself, and had 12 to 15 addicts staying at his home. All electricity and hot water had been turned off, and anything valuable had been sold to feed their habits. This project documented the residents of this space leading up to their eviction and follows several of them after they faced jail and sickness, experienced fighting and love, attempts to get clean. Some of them sunk deeper into addiction, some faced jail time, some began families, and some of them simply survived out of this. But how Dimmock got connected to this project is she just asked to document them. Very casual, a window into another world that is something very unlike what she was experiencing. So I think of another image in this exhibition by Jeffrey Fletcher here, Hustle. It's a child hustling on the streets of New Orleans, making some money. You can see the child's blank expression as some money is getting thrown into a bucket. For me, this is a common scene in New York City, maybe not necessarily a child, but this is not something I would see often in Florida. I grew up in a suburban area, not something I would see often even in Atlanta. So for me, it could be a window into another world for someone. Photography can be simultaneously comforting and uncomfortable. An image can provide facts or an alternative reality. So we have this iconic image of VJ Day in Times Square. For many years, it was considered a very romantic image. Oh, it's a sailor coming home. He's kissing his longtime girlfriend. Later on, we discover they were total strangers, and he just grabbed her on the street and kind of force kissed her. So just thinking, that makes me uncomfortable now. It's not an endearing image. So thinking of an alternative reality, how much stuff is in the news that's not clear these days? All through photographs, even though the photo is real. What's what's behind it? Multiple photographers can photograph the same subject and present wildly different pieces. People can also have photographed the same thing visually and have very different concepts behind it. The work exhibited in the 2021 edition of the Magic Silver show, the Elena Diane Curris Juried Photo Media Exhibition, shares a healthy curiosity through visual formalism. Through the selection, you'll see artists who embrace the latest technology, others mastering early alternative processes, so those are still alive, people are still very much doing that, while some show their mind through experimental video. There's things in there that you will just stare at that will just not make sense, but you just kind of got to let go and just mentally just lend yourself to it. Through this art, it is revealed that the hand remains very much involved in the creation of photography. So I asked some people, why photography? One person said, it's time travel, it savors moments. It creates physical art that can hang and be a part of my world. I can tell stories through pictures. So I have this still from Breakfast at Tiffany's. Another person said, it allows me to express something it's too hard to say or make sense of. So there's kind of this surreal image of someone with these puzzle pieces. Something, I hate hearing because I can't paint or draw, I'm bad at math, maybe all those things are true, but come on now. And a really good one is photography fights with death and the passing of time. And it's a good fighter. So this incredible image from Doretha Lang, migrant mother, really captured the poverty and, in many ways strength of this woman who was just trying to make it. So while I talk about my appreciation of the medium, I think it's really important to really elaborate on my thank you and acknowledgement. It's been such a great time here. I got to have lunch with some people earlier today, and I got to learn more about Elena, which, she sounded just such a wonderful young woman. Hear some stories that didn't appear online and how everyday moments inspired her. And for so many of these photographers, I think it's the everyday moments that were really meaningful to them that they just kind of latched onto and reflected on and made work on. It's very clear to me that the Curris family deeply cares about Murray State and the art program. Especially after hearing Professor Martin talk, you guys have something really special here. Not everyone cares this deeply about their art programs. I encourage everyone to learn more about Elena and to think about how you can help keep and preserve the memory and passion of someone that you may have loved and lost in the past. So the exhibition began in the 70s as a juried exhibition designed to encourage, foster understanding, and reward those involved in photographic media. The exhibition returned recently to Murray State under the sponsorship of Dr. Constantine and Joe Curris, and in memory of their daughter, Elena. And I know we already went over this, but Dr. Curris is the 6th president of Murray State, and the exhibition is funded by an endowment to the visual arts by family and friends of Elena Diane Curris to memorialize her generous and adventurous spirit and to support the strength and reputation of the visual arts at Murray State. So I think it's important to know a little bit about me and where I'm coming from. Why did I choose the work that I chose? The person next to me would choose something different. It could be an absolutely different exhibition. So I was born in Wisconsin and raised in Central Florida, and then I did college all in Central Florida. So in 2009, I got my bachelor's from Florida State. 2012, I got my MFA from the University of Central Florida, and my first job out of graduate school was working in the Savannah College of Art and Design in Atlanta. I was in the sculpture department. I got to get really familiar with new technology, laser cutters, 3D printers, scanners, things that at the time were very new. I think they're pretty normal now, but that's really where an interest of mine in technology began. I wanted to move more into gallery and curatorial work. So I moved to New York City in early 2015 and got a gallery assistant position at a gallery based in Switzerland. They opened a second location in New York, Jan Kosen Contemporary. I was there for about a year, And then I was also balancing a job at Parsons School of Design at that time. In 2016, I landed what I would consider my dream job. I became the director of a photography gallery, Foley Gallery. It's a dealer that I learned about in college. It was just a match made in heaven. We're such a great team. But shortly after, not shortly, I was there for about 3.5 years, I realized I wanted to go more into curatorial work and art acquisitions. In some ways you kind of cap out what you can do with a small staff. So my current roles now, I do independent curatorial work. I have Treat Gallery, which I'll talk about a little bit later. It's something that I started where I show work from artists. We donate a portion to a nonprofit or charity. We have pop-up exhibitions. We go to art fairs. The main takeaway from that project is to treat others through contemporary art. So there's a variety of nonprofits that we've worked with in the past. I do some media work for Nordstrom, so I shoot some videos for them, some of their Instagram content I'm behind, so very different from some of my other roles. I'm also faculty at the International Center of Photography. I teach a professional practices course, and main media workshops in college. I teach a theory and professional practices course, so balancing a lot of jobs, which is not a new thing in the art field. So for me, when I ask myself, why photography? There's so many reasons. It is so hard to just choose one. So here's some of my favorites. You can document your surroundings. It's a tool for self-expression. You can raise awareness. You can experiment or perfect a process. You can sell a product or an idea, for better or for worse. Think about that KISS image. And you can inspire others. So I have this image of mine from 2010, and it is what was at the time my full makeup collection. So I was 22. I love that I just had a conversation with Dr. Curris here about how makeup is a work of art in its own, because I revisit this series every 5 years. And I know some of you got to see this yesterday in a class, but every 5 years I visit this project and I see what is in my makeup collection right now. And it's like a self-portrait. Right now I have more anti-wrinkle cream. The colors aren't as vibrant. And 5 years from now, it's going to be a lot different. And I'll be close to 40 in 5 years. So it's just ever-changing portrait. And the portraits get better because my equipment gets better. So it's kind of this strange thing that continues to evolve. When I think of documentation, I think of this other great image that is here in the show. It's from a photographer, Claude Beller, Subway Father. Not a common scene that I see in New York. This is a photographer who spent 35 years producing and directing documentary films. So you can see very much like there's a narrative involved in the work he's creating. He did work for public television, and then he began to focus his creative talents to photography. He's inspired by photographers like Bruce Davidson, Helen Levitt, Richard Sandler, and Gary Winogrand. So these are all photographers that had very old school street photography, decisive moment styles of shooting. It very much reminded me of one of my favorite photographs from Henry Cartier-Bresson titled Romania. I saw this at an exhibition in Chicago and almost cried. I love this image. It's not even just the image itself, it's just how much they're together. They're on a train. I really like to think it was truly a decisive moment that the photographer carried out. I think there's just so much going on in there. I also really like when people have fun with photography. So this iconic image by Cartier-Bresson, behind the Gare Saint-Lazare, the guy jumping. I love that someone recreated this work among many others with Legos. Photography doesn't have to be entirely serious all the time. It can be fun. And in my own way, I kind of take that to the work that I create. So here's one of my images that seems to be a favorite amongst people, Hello Bombshell, taken 11 years ago. So I think everyone sees something different here. Is it funny? Is it sad? Like, what am I trying to say? Some people say, they're turning their bodies away from it. They're kind of like talking about it. I think it's kind of interesting that people can put their own narratives in there. And I don't know what's going on. And that's kind of the joy of what photography can do. There's another image in the show, Tom Jeans by Dan Farnham. And this is a man who was born and raised in a blue-collar city of Saginaw, Michigan. You know, he has an MFA. He also works in and out of university galleries. But he's just a man about town, and he did some street photography and found this great person and took their portrait. So I think the photography that I'm often attracted to, unless it's meant to be commercial or it's kind of abstract, which I'll get into in a moment, is the work that is very decisive and documentary in form. So here's a couple more of Cartier-Bresson's pieces. It's another piece in the exhibition by Britta Di Agostino. I hope I pronounced that right. So this is a very controlled image. I wasn't sure what to expect until I saw it in person, and I think it's great. The series of this project, it focuses on the art of cultural consumption by transferring print media targeted towards women into dynamic and semi-abstract collages and installations. So everything you're looking at here, it's like from ads that target women that's kind of collaged together and made into an abstract form. But then she photographs it. So by definition, it is like a photograph that's been deconstructed and put back together. Informed by historical art movements and contemporary practice, she reimagines the visual language of these magazines into hybridized collage forms created both intentionally and intuitively. Through her process, she explores the visual design and patterns embedded in a social system of images, which have been carefully constructed to elicit desire in consumers. Her playful aesthetic investigates deconstructing and recombining surfaces, subverting the original meaning of the source material by creating new forms and thereby offering a fresh perspective of the content for the audience. So as you can see, the end result is a combination of shapes and color that borders on abstraction, yet incorporates elements of contemporary American consumer culture. So in that same vein, I think of another artist, Anastasia Samoylova. This is someone who was born in Russia, and she was very interested in computer screensavers, how the shapes would kind of come around the screen. It was something really intriguing for her. So going back to what I mentioned earlier, really small moments and experiences, like a computer screensaver, can really stick with someone for years, and she made this later on in life after moving to America in her 20s. This is from her series, Landscape Sublime. The series focuses on the way that landscape imagery in our contemporary culture is used to create constructed realities. Wholly apart from our lived experience, Samoylova collects online stock photography, creating a group of landscape images that reflect the stream of consciousness, nature, of internet surfing, and the idealized imagery of consumer culture. The digital images are printed, cut, folded, and reassembled into three-dimensional studio pieces that are then rephotographed. The resulting works collage together unreal and romanticized spaces, evoking the way that commercial images reflect popular taste like an infinite hall of mirrors. One of the other reasons I liked photography, why it's my chosen medium, why photography, it can be personal. So Frederick May, another exhibitor in the show, from the late 80s on, this guy made a great living as a photojournalist and commercial photographer. He traveled all over the world, created very different work. He had open heart surgery in 2012 and suffered from a stroke. That life event changed his artistic vision, and it opened up an entirely new visual style. The result of the work he's making now is his current project, Operation Postcards from ICU. After his stroke, it rendered him legally blind and subject to vivid visual hallucinations. In his statement, he mentioned that it was hard for him to put together people's portraits in his mind, so he began to kind of sketch them out as he remembered them. But as you can see, it's not quite right, but you can kind of make out a portrait and some features. So he's really sharing what he's going through on paper with the viewer. So photography can be personal. Veronica, Jessica here kind of showing some, family ideals, how that may have changed. Another exhibitor in the show, Cahomi Brown, so self-portrait, fluid in neither. Something that was kind of interesting about this piece is I didn't have much to go on. There wasn't much of a statement. I couldn't find their website. So the image kind of stands on its own, which with the other work, with the portrait, the cyanotypes with the portraits, I think for me that needed a statement. So photography is so open to interpretation. Another exhibitor, Amelia Morris, she has these self-portraits. She explores the themes of identity, memory, and self-perception. And her work's autobiographical content is expressed through interest in literal and symbolic self-portraiture, a jarring relationship between image or object and written text, meditative gestures, and what Amelia lovingly calls low-grade performance art. So again, you don't have to take it too seriously. And these are beautiful images, even if the statement is a little lighthearted. There's another image here from Debbie Henry Danielson. She has a couple pieces in the show as well. She's been photographing her mother who has Alzheimer's, and these are images that are through an iPhone. You don't need the latest technology to take emotionally moving images. If you're constantly photographing, your projects can also evolve into something bigger. I think of this artist, Deanna Dykman. Over the course of 27 years, from 1991 until 2017, Deanna had a ritual. Every time she left her parents' house in Sioux City, Iowa, she would snap a photo of her mom and dad waving goodbye from the driveway. So the resulting photo series, titled Leaving and Waving, is part family photo album, part homage to a parent's steady affection and unwavering love. So there's one of the first images in 1991. You can see her mother in the foreground and her father in the background against that red home. Beautiful image, in my opinion. 1997, so she has a baby now. You can still see her parents, and I'm assuming another family member like an aunt in the background as well. She said, "I never set out to make a series. I just took these photographs as a way to deal with the sadness of leaving. These photographs are part of a larger body of work I call Relative Moments. When I discovered the series of unaccumulated leaving and waving photographs, I found a story about family, aging, and the sorrow of saying goodbye." Here's the image from 2002. Here's the image from 2009. It's the first one where her father doesn't appear in the series. In a sense, leaving and waving could be described as one long, extended goodbye. The sorrow that Dykman describes weaves its way subtly through the series, crescendoing into two equally emotional frames. The first, captured in 2009, in which her father is no longer present. The second, the final photograph in the series, shows an empty driveway. So here's an image from 2015, where you can see that that baby from 97 is now grown up. 2016, and then 2017. It's a deeply personal project, but when I look at this series, I think of my own parents and how they always wave goodbye to me. And I think about my grandmother who passed away in 2016. And even in her elderly years, when she could, she would walk out and just watch us drive away. For me, even though it's a very personal project, Deanna's parents are her parents. I don't know them, but I think of my own family and how this work can connect. And I think there's so much work in the exhibition that can link to your emotions in that way. Photography can change an opinion. I don't know if anyone remembers this dress. Is it blue and black? Is it white or gold? That was a whole other uproar, and the image never changed. I had a series that I began where I would photograph men that catcalled me on the streets. I had sunglasses that would take images. You can see what those look like on the upper right. A lot of people didn't think that, catcalling was an issue, and I sought out to kind of show this form of harassment. Another image from a photographer, Chris Graves, that made the cover of National Geographic. Just some of the things that the Black community was dealing with. and how a lot of people had opinions on that. And I think photography can change the world. I think through photos, people can really share some terrible things that are going on. So I look at Mike Wells, a starving boy and missionary in Uganda from 1980. There's also other images like Napalm Girl and, a lot of stuff that I left out. I didn't think it'd be appropriate for the lecture, but, a young man holds his face in his hand as rain falls on the decimated remains of his home. What an image. Someone who just lost everything. Can also empower people who are going through something terrible. So this photographer, Claudia Paul, I'm sharing her Faces of Resilience project. She photographed people in a very professional and beautiful way who were at the front lines of the pandemic. These are people who were just drained and exhausted. They worked in Mount Sinai locations in New York City. Really, just tragedy on a daily basis. But she really photographed the strength that they had. And photography can be fun. So I love this kid. I mean, he grew up to be an adult and loved photography, but Jacques Henry Latigue, it was a young kid who got hold of a camera, and the work that he took was really fun. So there's him taking a self-portrait in a bathtub. Think of Diane Arbus. She did some fun work. Joseph Dessler Costa, who would use technology through Photoshop to layer images together and make really vibrant, kind of silly images. Thomas Allen, who would cut open pulp books, like pulp fiction books, westerns, and create scenes out of them. Another person in the exhibition, Thomas Whitworth, he would make these little miniatures using little toys, construct things together, and take a photograph finally. One of the main reasons people love photography, it's beautiful. Look at these pieces from Steve Barger. I guess it's only one piece. There's a few in the exhibition, but these are scenes that take dedication. It's like to a science, very different from having a decisive moment. It's planned. He probably has had to go out there multiple times. He has to see when the aurora borealis is coming. These are really specific moments that people are aiming to capture within expected outcome. Another piece in the show, Todd Birdsong's Currently 900. So he's kind of playing with digital glitches in photography. And this is an artist based in New York. His name is actually Wyatt Gallery. That's his last name. These are, if you think of advertisements and years of them being torn down, glued back up together, torn down again. This is what that looks like before a new ad is brought up. And for him, he thought it was kind of years of a collaborative piece of art made by, train workers, I suppose. And he would photograph that. And that looks like an abstract painting in itself, but it's a photograph. So I really think that photography has endless possibilities. Another image in the show, Gloria de Philip's brush, very surreal image. So what kind of work do I enjoy? I mentioned earlier, I'm one person. The show will be very different next year. It should be very different next year. One of my favorite photographers is Guy Bourdois. I say that name wrong every time, so my apologies for who's watching. I think that the work is really, really glamorous and strange. Much like the work I create, I like data-based work. I don't create conceptually heavy work, but I seem to be attracted to work that is kind of smart and concept heavy. I like things that are unique and new, maybe things that push technology. I like work that's funny. I like work that's created from people who are differently abled. Emerging work, I think that people take more risks when there's not a lot of money involved. So I think that's something I look out for. But something that's really important is the work that I enjoy. The work that I have bought that's hanging in my home, it's very different from the work that I create. The work I curate is also very different from the work that I buy. The work I focus on is different depending on where it's going. So keep creating, and there's an audience out there for you. This is a picture of myself and a co-curator at the Center for Book Arts in New York. We curated a large show last year, first show since the pandemic. So you can just see more of the stuff I have here. So it was mentioned earlier that I was the director of Foley Gallery for about 3.5 years. So there's the space on the bottom right, and there's Michael Foley, my old boss, and I on the left. And then us in a booth. You can see my blue hair. I tend to be a little colorful on the upper right. So I like work that is really unique. When I'm curating something, I think of work that only that artist could have created, an idea that's personal to them, something that is unique. If it is something that is a technological process or something I'm trying to master, that's also something I have to take into account. You know, not everyone has the same goals as an artist, especially if you're a photographer or videographer. Something that always has been very important to me is helping others, though. So shortly after I moved to New York City and really got involved in the art scene, I noticed there was so much distrust between artists and dealers. I noticed there was a lot of dishonesty in the field. And I wasn't brought up accepting dishonesty. So I really wanted to create something that helped others. So I came up with the idea, treat gallery, treating others in need. And, to this day, I wonder, is that like a dumb name? I don't know. But I kind of like that it's a little lighthearted and that it's bright, because that's who I am. And I think that's how I can be most genuine. So we do a lot of large-scale projects. There's a picture here of an artist looking at something that I did a couple of years ago called the Treat America Project. We had one photographer for each state, so there were 50 photographers representing all 50 states in the U.S., and they took a photo every day, and it was loaded up to an Instagram. We then had a curator choose one image from that person's takeover, so we had 50 photographs on the wall. $50 from each image, and they're very small. You can see they're 4 by 4 inches or 4 by 6 inches. $50 is donated to a nonprofit selected by that person. So a lot of moving parts, a little complicated, but we raised a lot of money for causes that people really resonated with. And most importantly, it got people thinking about how they can use their skills to help others. One of my largest projects was at Pulse Art Fair in 2019. It was during Art Basel in Miami. So I had a lot of photographers apply to this exhibition, and the only stipulation in the open call was that the work had to be 80% one color. So you can see it's kind of this rainbow wall going on behind me. But we donated a third of proceeds to the One Pulse Foundation in Orlando, Florida. Being from Central Florida, the Pulse nightclub shooting in 2016 really hit me in a hard way. Orlando, I got my master's degree in Orlando, Florida. That was a place that I had been to with friends. Orlando's always been such a great community for the LGBTQ community. And to see all of that, see that tragedy unfold, it was like, how can I help? What can I do? So we actually partnered with the One Pulse Foundation. They were our partner every step of the way, wanted to make sure that we weren't doing anything inappropriate. So they reviewed every press release, every piece of content that went out, and the artists were great with us donating a third also. Typically, artists get 50% of a sale, but artists here only got 33% of a sale. A lot of them donated their cut to a nonprofit as well. Through this work and just being transparent about the goal, we got a lot of the prints donated, really deep discounts for exhibiting at the fair, getting the prints done. So I really think photography can have endless possibilities when you think about what it is you want to do, not just in photography, but the bigger picture, no pun intended, in life. What is it you want to do? It was hard to sell the idea at first, so I made this little concept of what I kind of wanted the show to look like. So it's a little strange because some of the work in this did not necessarily make it into the finished product. But it was hard to illustrate to people what it was I was trying to do. People would submit in work that was not 80% one color. And you can try and try and try, but people don't always listen. So you can see how that looks. Something else I've mentioned before, a lot of people applied with non-photographic work to the show, so people just don't listen, you know. So recently we exhibited at Affordable Art Fair. It was one of the first art fairs that New York had opened back up. I tend to be really organized, so I even have my booth laid out for fall. So September 22nd, we're going to have this fair, and you can see all of the work that I intend on exhibiting on the walls here. I also think of some of the work I do for Nordstrom and how you should always pitch your ideas to larger companies. So we had a lot of paintings that were acquired by a large Nordstrom that opened up in New York City, and I thought we should really do something to highlight these artists. There's just so much great work. So I had a series where I photographed people, employees of the store, where they would have makeup looks inspired by the work that was in our store's permanent collection. Here's a couple people that we also highlighted. They're barbers who work in one of the stores, just showing and appreciating what they do. Something really great about photography is I feel there's also endless support groups for it. It was mentioned earlier, that I serve on the board of the American Society of Media Photographers. I'm not a media photographer, but a lot of people want to cross over and they want to do some fine artwork. They want to do these art fairs. I'm happy to help that out. They should be able to do whatever they want and do it the right way. I love being that resource, and maybe some of my personal work will get picked up by media. I want someone to lean on with that too. It's a good support group. American Photographic Artists, the logo on the right, a couple other free ones, Women's Photo Alliance, Humble Arts Foundation, a lot of things that are free that you can look online for, Facebook, even Reddit. If you're feeling spicy, I have a little warning there. They can be a little harsh. But there's so many support groups out there that will help you create the best work you can and give you some good feedback. So there's a little critique group. I always encourage people to keep creating, because I think the more you create, the more you'll see what's working, and one day something will kind of go off and you'll say, this is what I want to do, this is different. So this artist, Parsley Steinweiss, these are photographs, but they're sculptural in nature. They're 3D and they're mounted onto plexiglass. She takes photos of the sky. So these are all photographs of the sky, whether night, sunrise, and she mounts them on acrylic, and they become these sculptural pieces that are technically photography. Some more fun stuff. This is an artist, Ashok Sinha, and he just took work. He really loved Los Angeles and how they have so many unique buildings. I wrote the foreword to a book that he had where this image appears, and it's just fun work, and that really resonates with an audience. So I think it's always important to just keep having fun with your work. While this isn't a photograph, I think it's funny that a photographer decided to take this image. This photo of a man eating a real donut in front of a fake ceramic donut, something kind of fun. So photography, if you're doing it on a personal level, it should never feel like a chore. It should be something that you want to do that comes from the heart. So I just encourage everyone to keep creating. So all right. Thank you all so much. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Sherri. Any questions from the audience? Feel free to ask.
You can also come up to me later and ask me.
So yes, we can. If we have no questions or comments, we can dismiss into the gallery for the reception and celebration of Elena and the Juried photography show that's on view. Let's give a moment just in case. All right, well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. Elena will be pleased.
I'm happy to hear that. Good. Hope so. That's what the goal is. Keep that passion alive.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I mean, as I mentioned in the introductory, it's been a year and a half since we've had an in-person visitor. And so this endowment is very important to, I mean, one of our last events was sponsored by this endowment, and this event is. So it really keeps us active and participating in the arts beyond Murray. So it's a really amazing opportunity. I just want to thank the Curris family yet again. And please, join us in the gallery, enjoy the show, and if you have any questions there, feel free to approach us. Thanks again. Thanks so much.
Thank you.